At 11:47 on the hottest night of the year, my neighbor knocked on my door and asked if I wanted to go swimming. By 12:32, we were standing alone at the end of a moonlit pier, and I was discovering that she had not brought a swimsuit. That wasn't an oversight. Her smile made that very clear. My name is Dylan Mercer. I was 26 that summer, working as an HVAC technician in a city where every air conditioner had apparently signed a suicide pact during the same week. For 6 straight days, the temperature had stayed above 100. I'd spent most of that Thursday climbing into attics hot enough to bake bread, listening to customers say, "I don't know how you do it." The answer was poorly. I got home around 10, took a cold shower, and lay on top of my sheets with a box fan pointed at my face. The duplex I rented had charm, according to the listing. In practical terms, that meant old windows, creaky floors, and electrical wiring that treated a microwave and an air conditioner running together as an unreasonable demand. My neighbor occupied the other half. Her name was Jenna. She was 25, designed window displays for boutiques downtown, and could make an empty storefront look like someone's expensive dream. She had moved in 10 months earlier with a boyfriend named Chris, who wore loafers without socks and once asked if my work van was a lifestyle choice. Chris had moved out 4 months before the heat wave. I'd been relieved in a way I had absolutely no right to be. Jenna and I had always gotten along. We took each other's packages inside, shared the narrow front porch, and had an informal agreement that whoever put the trash cans out first could complain dramatically while the other person provided coffee. After Chris left, our conversations changed. Not obviously, nothing you could point to in court. They just started lasting longer. She would sit sideways on the porch railing in the evenings, asking about my day. I'd tell her stories about raccoons and ductwork and homeowners who tried fixing compressors with online tutorials. She'd describe the strange requests she got from boutique owners, including one woman who wanted a summer display that felt coastal but emotionally unavailable. Jenna and I flirted around the edges of friendship, then pretended we hadn't. I had reasons for being careful. 18 months earlier, I'd ended an engagement that should have ended long before the ring. Afterward, I made myself a promise. No relationships built on convenience, loneliness, or seeing someone every day. Dating the woman who lived 12 feet from my kitchen seemed like a creative way to break all three rules at once. So when Jenna knocked that night, I opened the door expecting a tripped breaker or a spider large enough to require backup. Instead, she stood there in a fitted cream tank top and a light rust-colored skirt, her dark hair twisted into a loose knot. A canvas tote hung from one shoulder, and she held up her car keys. "Put on shoes," she said. I leaned against the doorframe. "Good evening to you too." "It's too hot for manners." "It's too hot to leave the house." "Exactly why we're leaving." I looked past her toward the porch. Heat shimmered above the sidewalk even at midnight. "Where?" "Lake Merritt. That's 40 minutes away. 32 with no traffic. The park closes at 10. One side does." There was a brightness in her eyes I hadn't seen since before Chris left. Not reckless exactly. More like she had already made a decision and was enjoying how long it took me to catch up. "You're inviting me to trespass?" I asked. "I'm inviting you to swim." Trespassing is such an ugly word for walking past a sign. "I have work at 7. You've been saying that every night for 3 months. Because I have a job every morning." Her gaze moved over my gray t-shirt and plaid sleep shorts. "You're dressed perfectly. For an arrest? For a bad decision?" I should have said no. Instead, I grabbed my sneakers. Jenna's old blue hatchback smelled like citrus air freshener and the iced coffee she had forgotten in the cup holder that morning. She rolled down the windows because her air conditioner had stopped working 2 days earlier. "You live next door to an HVAC technician," I said as we pulled away, "and you could have mentioned that." "I did." "When?" "Tuesday. You were carrying 2 toolboxes and talking on the phone." "That wasn't mentioning it. That was expecting telepathy." "I said, my car is trying to kill me." "I thought you meant you're driving." She looked over, offended for roughly half a second. Then she laughed, and I felt it in the center of my chest. The roads were nearly empty. Warm air rushed through the car, lifting strands of hair from her neck. She played an old playlist, songs with too much guitar and choruses we both pretended not to know. 20 minutes into the drive, she caught me singing. "You know every word," she said. "I know sounds that resemble the words. You pointed at me during the chorus. That was traffic related. There's nobody else on the road." Then it worked. She smiled toward the windshield, but her hand shifted on the console until her fingers rested inches from mine. Neither of us moved. That small gap became the loudest thing in the car. I looked at her profile in the dashboard glow. Jenna was beautiful, but it wasn't only the obvious things, the dark eyes, the soft curve of her mouth, the way the summer air had turned her cheeks pink. I liked how closely she noticed people. I liked that she could be playful without being careless. I liked that when I spoke, she listened as though she hadn't already decided what I meant. And I was tired of pretending I hadn't noticed any of it. "You've been quiet for 6 whole seconds," she said. "Should I be worried?" "I'm wondering why you picked me." Her smile faded slightly. "To come swimming," I added. "I know what you meant." A mile passed beneath us. Then she said, "Because you always look like you're waiting for permission to enjoy your own life." That landed harder than I expected. "And you thought you'd grant it?" "No." She glanced at me. "I thought I'd dare you." Lake Merritt wasn't a developed beach. It was a long stretch of dark water surrounded by pine trees and scattered private cabins, most of them unoccupied during the week. Jenna parked beside a narrow gravel path and took a small flashlight from her tote. "You've done this before," I said. "My aunt used to own a cabin here. I spent every summer at this lake until I was 16. "So we're not trespassing?" "Oh, we're definitely trespassing. I just know where." The path opened onto a small wooden pier. Moonlight lay across the water in silver bands, and the lake was so still that stepping onto the dock felt like entering a different night. The city heat, the service calls, the fan rattling beside my bed, all of it suddenly seemed very far away. Jenna slipped off her sandals and walked to the edge. I set down my towel and pulled my shirt over my head. When I looked up, she was watching me, not accidentally. Her eyes traveled over my chest before meeting mine again, and instead of looking embarrassed, she tilted her head. "Work agrees with you," she said. "You've seen me carry groceries. Not shirtless." My pulse kicked. "Jenna? Dylan. That tone usually means you're about to make my life difficult." "Only temporarily." She set her tote beside mine. That was when I noticed it held 2 towels, 2 bottles of water, and nothing else. "No swimsuit?" I asked. She turned her back to the lake and looked at me with a slow, provocative smile. "No." I waited for her to laugh. She didn't. Then she hooked her thumbs lightly at the waistband of her skirt and lowered it just enough to make my brain forget every useful skill I had ever learned. "You drove me 40 minutes into the woods," I said carefully, "knowing you didn't bring one." "I drove you to a lake at midnight during a heat wave." Her voice softened. "What exactly did you think I had planned?" The teasing was still there, but something more vulnerable moved underneath it. She wasn't only trying to shock me, she was asking me to stop hiding. Jenna held my gaze and stepped closer until the warm scent of her skin replaced the pine around us. "So," she whispered, "are you getting in with me, or are you going to spend another 4 months pretending you don't want to?" There are moments when your life divides cleanly into before and after. Standing on that pier with Jenna inches away from me was one of them. Before I could tell myself I'd imagined the lingering looks and late porch conversations. I could call our chemistry neighborly friendliness. I could pretend that wanting her didn't matter because I was disciplined enough not to act on it. After her question, none of those lies survived. "I don't need 4 months to answer," I said. Her smile returned. "Good. But I have one condition." "That sounds suspiciously responsible." "You go first." Jenna laughed under her breath. "Nervous?" Trying to be respectful. The humor in her expression softened. She touched 2 fingers to the center of my chest. It was a small gesture, but every muscle in my body went still beneath it. "That," she said, "is exactly why I picked you." Then she turned me around by the shoulders. "Don't peek. You just accused me of pretending I'm not interested. Interested and trustworthy aren't opposites." Behind me, I heard the faint rustle of fabric, followed by the soft tap of something landing on the pier. I concentrated on the black line of pine trees across the lake. Then came a splash. I turned. Jenna was already in the water, submerged to her shoulders, her hair loose and dark around her. Her clothes rested in a neat pile beside her sandals. She swept one arm through the moonlit water. Your turn. I could still retreat. I could make a joke, sit on the dock, and call that participation. But she hadn't brought me there for half measures. Neither of us had. I hooked my thumbs into the waistband of my shorts. Her eyebrows lifted. You can look away, I said. I could. She didn't. I laughed, turned my back, and left my shorts beside my shirt before diving in. The cold hit me like a slammed door. I surfaced, gasping. You said this would feel good. It does. I can no longer feel my organs. That's how you know it's working. Jenna floated backward as I swam toward her, keeping a few feet between us. The lake was warmer below the surface, but the night air raised goosebumps across my shoulders. Is this really what you used to do here? I asked. Not exactly. What's different? She smiled. I was usually wearing a swimsuit. So tonight was a special occasion. You're catching on. I splashed water toward her. She twisted away, laughing, then sent twice as much back at me. Within seconds, any attempt at dignity was gone. We chased each other around the end of the dock like teenagers, careful to stay mostly submerged whenever the moon grew too helpful. Jenna reached the ladder first and caught the side rail. Truce, she said, breathless. You started it. I invited you. You started splashing. You provoked me. That seems to be a pattern tonight. I stopped beside her. The laughter between us faded, leaving the quiet sound of water touching wood. One of her legs brushed mine beneath the surface. Neither of us pulled away. Her fingers tightened around the ladder rail. Up close, I could see droplets caught in her eyelashes. Dylan, she said. I knew that tone. It wasn't teasing now. What? Tell me if this was a bad idea. It was absolutely a bad idea. Her face fell. I moved closer before she could misunderstand. But I'm glad we did it. Relief crossed her expression, followed by something less guarded. You're infuriating, she whispered. You drove me here under false pretenses. I said swimming. You omitted a significant detail. I was afraid you wouldn't come. I probably wouldn't have. Exactly. I rested one hand on the ladder beside hers. Why tonight? She looked past me toward the moonlit center of the lake. Because I got tired of wondering. Wondering what? If I was imagining this. She gestured between us, causing another small ripple. You weren't, I said. I know that now. You could have asked me. Would you have told me? The honest answer sat between us. No. She nodded as though that proved her point. You're careful with me. I'm trying not to hurt you. That's what people say when they want credit for keeping one foot out the door. I flinched. Jenna noticed. She always noticed. I'm sorry, she said. That was unfair. No, it wasn't. The truth was uglier than caution. Since my engagement ended, I had treated distance like proof of maturity. If I never promised much, I could. Never disappoint anyone. I'd called it responsibility because fear sounded worse. I spent 3 years with someone who kept waiting for me to become a different man, I said. More ambitious, more social, less likely to come home smelling like insulation. Insulation is a difficult scent. I smiled despite myself. My point is, I didn't see how bad it had gotten until we were planning a wedding neither of us wanted. Since then, I haven't trusted my judgment. Jenna studied me. Do you think I want a different version of you? No. Then stop making me pay for what she did. The words weren't cruel, they were quiet and direct. Her hand left the rail and came to rest against my cheek. I leaned into her touch before I could think better of it. I don't know how to do this casually, I admitted. Good. Good? I didn't invite you because I needed a swimming buddy. Her thumb traced the edge of my jaw. I invited you because every time you sit beside me on that porch, I spend half the conversation wondering what it would feel like if you kissed me. My heartbeat became almost painful. What do you spend the other half doing? trying not to stare at your mouth. I moved closer until only an inch remained between us. Are you trying now? No. So I kissed her. At first it was gentle, almost cautious, despite everything that had brought us there. Jenna's lips were cool from the water. Her hand slid behind my neck and she kissed me again with 4 months of frustration behind it. The ladder pressed into my side. The lake moved around us. Somewhere in the trees, insects hummed beneath the beating of my pulse. I wrapped an arm around her waist under the water and drew her closer. She made a soft, surprised sound against my mouth, then held onto me like she had already decided not to retreat. When we finally separated, our foreheads stayed together. That, she whispered, was also part of the plan. You planned this? I hoped aggressively. I laughed and she kissed the corner of my mouth. For a while we floated beside the pier with our arms around each other. The intimacy felt bigger than the lack of clothes. It wasn't about seeing her. It was about being seen by her and not finding a joke fast enough to hide behind. Eventually, Jenna shivered. We should get out, I said. You first. You watched me get in. And I have no regrets. I climbed the ladder and wrapped a towel around my waist, then turned my back while she got out. A moment later, her towel brushed my arm. You can look, she said. She had wrapped it around herself, her wet hair spilling over her shoulders. We sat at the end of the pier with our feet above the water. Jenna leaned against me. I put an arm around her, and she tucked her head beneath my chin as naturally as if we had done it 100 times. So what happens when we go home? She asked. I take you out tomorrow. Her head lifted. On a date? A real one. I thought you had work. I'll survive one tired day. She smiled. Look at you, enjoying your own life. I had permission. No, you made a choice. She was right. I bent and kissed her again, slower this time. When I pulled back, the smile remained on her lips, but uncertainty had entered her eyes. There's something else, she said. Every instinct in me tightened. What? The boutique group I work for offered me a promotion. That's great. It would be. The way she said it stopped me from celebrating. Where? Denver. The lake suddenly felt much colder. I found out yesterday, she continued. They want an answer by Monday. Monday was 3 days away. I looked down at her hand resting beside mine on the weathered boards. Is that why you brought me here? Partly. She threaded her fingers through mine. I couldn't decide whether to leave while I was still pretending there was nothing worth staying for. Her hand held mine tighter. And now? I asked. Jenna looked at me, her expression open and frightened. Now I know I wasn't imagining us. For several seconds, I said nothing. Jenna's promotion hung between us, turning the dock beneath us from a beginning into a deadline. Denver was nearly 1,000 miles away. It wasn't a different neighborhood or even a different state. It was plane tickets, time, zones, and carefully scheduled phone calls. It was everything I had been avoiding, arriving 5 minutes after our first kiss. You should take it, I said. Jenna's fingers loosened around mine. That was fast. It's a promotion. I know what it is. You shouldn't give up a major opportunity because we kissed once. Twice. Jenna. No, you're right. She withdrew her hand completely. It would be irrational to let one night influence the rest of my life. That's not what I meant. It sounded exactly like what you meant. She stood, clutching her towel around herself and walked toward her clothes. I followed. What do you want me to say? The truth would be nice. The truth is, I don't want you to go. She stopped. There it was, messy, selfish, and honest. I stepped closer. But I also don't want you to turn it down for a man you haven't even had dinner with. Jenna looked over her shoulder. I wasn't asking permission to stay. I know. Do you? The question stung because I had done exactly what she accused me of doing earlier. I had reached for the safest answer before admitting what I felt. She gathered her clothes. Turn around, she said. I obeyed. While we dressed, the silence felt nothing like the comfortable quiet we had shared in the water. On the walk back to the car, Jenna stayed several steps ahead of me. She drove with both hands on the wheel, the windows down and the music off. I tried twice to speak. Both times, the words sounded inadequate before they left my mouth. When we reached home, dawn had started thinning the sky. Jenna pulled into the driveway and killed the engine. "Thanks for coming," she said. It was painfully polite. "Are we still having dinner tonight?" She stared through the windshield. "You worked all day yesterday. You should sleep." I didn't ask what I should do. That made her look at me. "I asked whether you still want to have dinner with me." The hurt in her expression shifted, though it didn't disappear. "Yes," she said. "Then I'll pick you up at 7. We share a porch. I'll still knock." One corner of her mouth moved. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was enough to let me breathe. I slept for 90 minutes, worked 9 hours, and spent my lunch break trying to find a restaurant whose air conditioner hadn't broken. At 6:45, I showered, changed into the only button-down shirt I owned that didn't make me look like I was attending a job interview, and stood in front of Jenna's door holding a small potted cactus. Flowers felt too dramatic. The cactus might have been worse. She opened the door wearing a dark green sundress, her hair falling in loose waves over her shoulders. For a moment, I forgot the speech I had rehearsed. Her gaze dropped to the plant. "Is that an apology cactus?" "It's drought-resistant. Appropriate for the weather." "Does it come with a card?" The card said, "Sorry I responded to emotional vulnerability like a customer asking for an estimate." She tried not to smile. Very specific inventory at that store. I had it custom made. Jenna accepted the cactus and stepped aside. "Come in while I find somewhere safe to put this weapon." I had been in her half of the duplex plenty of times, but that evening it felt different. Maybe because I was there as a man taking her on a date instead of a neighbor checking a smoke detector? Maybe because I couldn't stop thinking about the way she had held me in the lake. She placed the cactus on her kitchen windowsill. "Before we go," I said, "I owe you a better answer." Her shoulders tensed. "I'm listening." "I want you to get everything you've worked for. I also want the chance to find out what this is." I gestured between us. Both things are true, and I panicked because I don't know how they can both happen. "Neither do I. I'm not going to pretend I don't care just to make Monday easier." Some of the tension left her face. "That's all I wanted," she said. "Not a grand gesture, not a reason to stay, just the truth." "The truth is I barely slept because I kept thinking about kissing you." "You barely slept because we got home at 4. That contributed." She took a step toward me. "What else did you think about?" "The porch, the lake, that thing you do when you're trying not to smile." "What thing?" "That." Her smile broke free. I reached for her hand, and I thought about how much I hated you letting go of me. Her fingers closed around mine. "I hated doing it," she admitted. I drew her closer, giving her time to stop me. She didn't. Her free hand came to my chest, and when I kissed her, she rose onto her toes and met me halfway. This kiss wasn't fueled by moonlight or adrenaline. We were in her kitchen beneath an aggressively bright ceiling fixture, with an apology cactus watching from the windowsill. It was better. It felt chosen. When we parted, she smoothed the front of my shirt. "Your collar is crooked," she whispered. "I've been under a lot of pressure." I can tell." "Still want dinner?" "Yes, but if you say I should order whatever I want because it's my decision, I'm leaving." I was going to recommend the chicken. The restaurant was a 24-hour diner by the interstate, with cold air conditioning and laminated menus. Jenna ordered pancakes for dinner. I got a burger, then surrendered half my fries because she kept reaching across the table. "This is theft," I said as she took another. "We're dating now. It's taxation." "Are we?" She paused with the fry halfway to her mouth. I hadn't meant the question as a challenge, but it landed that way. "I'd like to be," I said. Jenna set the fry down. "Even if I take the job?" "Yes." You don't know what that would look like." "No, but I know what giving up before we start looks like." "I've done that." Her eyes searched mine. Then she slid her hand across the table, palm up. I took it. "Okay," she said. "We're dating." A ridiculous wave of happiness moved through me. For the record, girlfriends get a maximum of 6 fries. Boyfriends who count fries don't get invited swimming. I tightened my hand around hers. Extortion. Boundaries. We stayed until the server refilled our coffee 3 times. Jenna told me about the promotion properly. She would oversee visual campaigns for 14 stores instead of 3. Better salary, actual budget authority, and a team of designers working beneath her. It was the kind of role she had wanted for years. Then why haven't you accepted? I asked. She traced the rim of her mug. Because wanting the work isn't the same as wanting the life that comes with it. What life? Starting over alone. Again. She had followed Chris to our city after he accepted a job. When their relationship ended, he went home to his family while she stayed because she had built a career and friendships here. I finally made this place feel like mine, she said. Now I'm being told success means leaving it. And leaving isn't automatically brave, I said. Her eyes lifted. Neither is staying, I continued. You don't have to prove anything by choosing the harder option. She squeezed my hand. That was almost wise. I'm very tired. After dinner, we walked around the block rather than going inside. The air was still warm, but distant lightning flickered beyond the rooftops, promising the heat wave might finally break. When we reached our porch, Jenna sat on the top step and patted the space beside her. I joined her. She leaned into my shoulder. Can we have this weekend? What do you mean? No making my decision for me. No pretending Monday isn't coming either. Just 2 days to see what we've been avoiding. I turned toward her. A 2-day relationship trial? That sounds terrible. Intensive dating seminar? Worse. I kissed her temple. How about our first weekend? She smiled against my shoulder. That one. Thunder rolled somewhere beyond the city. We sat there until the first cool wind moved down the street. Then Jenna stood and held out her hand. I expected her to say goodnight. Instead, she pulled me toward her door. Come inside, she said. My pulse jumped, but she must have seen the question in my face. To stay, she clarified softly. Not for anything else. I don't want to be alone tonight. I followed her in. We fell asleep fully clothed on her couch, her head on my chest and my arm around her waist. At 6 in the morning, Jenna's phone vibrated on the coffee table. She shifted against me, reached for it, and read the email. I felt her entire body go still. What is it? She handed me the phone. The company had changed the terms. The promotion was still hers, but only if she could report to Denver in 10 days. 10 days. Jenna sat up on the couch and read the email again as though a second look might reveal a less alarming number. It was supposed to be 6 weeks, she said. I rubbed sleep from my eyes. Did they explain why it changed? The regional director quit. They want me there for the fall campaign meeting. Can you ask for more time? I can ask. But? She lowered the phone. If I need 6 weeks to decide, they'll find someone who doesn't. Morning light came through her blinds in narrow stripes. Her hair was tangled from sleep, and one side of her face bore the faint imprint of my shirt button. 10 minutes earlier, waking with her against me had felt like a glimpse of something I could get used to. Now a countdown had appeared over it. Jenna walked into the kitchen and started making coffee. She moved too quickly, opening the wrong cabinet twice. I came up behind her and rested my hands lightly on her shoulders. Breathe. She did, though the breath shook on the way out. What do you want me to do? She asked. I turned her toward me. You don't have to decide at 6 in the morning. That isn't an answer. You're asking me to tell you whether to go. I'm asking what you want. The distinction mattered. I held her gaze. I want you, I said. Here in Denver, anywhere. I want more than 1 weekend and I'm willing to do the work for it. Her expression softened, but I wasn't finished. I also want to wake up 6 months from now knowing you didn't resent me for making your decision smaller. I wouldn't. You don't know that. Neither do you. You're right. I slid my hands down her arms and took hers. So here's the honest answer. I want you to stay. I hate the thought of you leaving. But if you go, I'm not using the distance as an excuse to disappear. Jenna looked down at our joined hands. You'd try long distance? I'd do more than try. I'd buy plane tickets. I'd call when I said I would. I'd learn to sleep without stealing your blanket. You don't know that I steal blankets. You took the couch throw sometime around 4. I was cold. You wrapped yourself like a burrito. Her mouth curved despite everything. I'd visit, I continued, and I'd expect you to come back sometimes. We'd figure out whether this can become something real without requiring either of us to sacrifice a career after 3 dates. We've had 1 date. The lake counts. The lake was an ambush. It was memorable. She stepped closer and rested her forehead against my chest. I'm scared, she admitted. So am I. Last night felt like we finally opened a door, and this morning someone moved the whole building. I put my arms around her. Then we stopped trying to solve the next year before breakfast. She looked up. What do we solve? Today. And what happens today? I make you coffee because you're doing it wrong. She gave me a tired laugh. Then she kissed me. It wasn't a dramatic kiss. It was warm and sleepy, carrying the vulnerability of 2 people who had admitted they wanted something neither knew how to keep. When she pulled away, she touched my cheek. Okay, she whispered. Today. We treated Saturday like an entire relationship compressed into 12 hours. We got breakfast from a food truck and ate in the shade behind the farmer's market. Jenna bought peaches despite insisting they were impossible to eat with dignity. Juice ran down her wrist on the first bite. I handed her a napkin. Not one word, she warned. I was going to say you look elegant. You were going to say something about our first date ending in nudity and our second starting like this. I'm more sophisticated than that. You brought me a cactus. After breakfast, she took me to the boutique where she worked. The store was closed, but she had a key. She led me through the displays she'd built, explaining why the colors, heights, and lighting mattered. I had passed those windows dozens of times without understanding how much of her was in them. This is my favorite, she said, stopping beside a display built around suspended paper birds and pale blue fabric. You made all of those? 219. That sounds less like art and more like a cry for help. She bumped her shoulder against mine. Then she showed me the concept sketches on her tablet for the campaign she would lead in Denver. Her voice changed when she talked about it, faster, brighter, full of certainty. Watching her, I understood something I hadn't wanted to admit. She needed to take the job. Not because leaving was brave or because ambition mattered more than us. She needed to take it because the work made her more herself. Jenna saw the realization on my face. Don't, she said. Don't what? Look at me like you've made my decision. I haven't. You think I should go. I think you light up when you talk about it. Her eyes glistened. That doesn't make this easier. I know. Tell me you wish the offer had come from somewhere here. I wish it had come from the building next door. She laughed through the tears gathering in her eyes. I wiped one away with my thumb. And I wish we'd stopped being cowards months ago, I said. We? You had a boyfriend. After Chris. I was trying to be respectful. You were hiding. So were you. She considered that, then nodded. Fair. I kissed her between the paper birds. That evening, the heat wave finally broke. Rain swept through the city so suddenly that the street outside the duplex vanished behind silver sheets. Jenna and I stood on the porch, watching steam rise from the pavement. This is probably how normal people swim during storms, I said, with clothes on. She took my hand and pulled me down the steps. What are you doing? Making up for lost time. Within seconds, we were soaked. Jenna lifted her face to the rain and laughed. I spun her once on the sidewalk, badly enough that we nearly slipped. She caught the front of my shirt and pulled me close. We kissed beneath the streetlight while rain ran down our faces. There was no audience, no music, and no guarantee beyond that moment. I had never felt less cautious in my life. On Sunday morning, Jenna called her future boss. She asked for a few extra days. They gave her 2. She asked whether she could begin remotely. They said the campaign meeting had to be in person. Then they asked for her answer. Jenna looked across the kitchen table at me. I nodded, not to decide for her, but to remind her she wasn't alone. I accept, she said. The words hurt. They also made me proud. After the call, she sat motionless for a moment. Then I moved around the table and pulled her to her feet. You okay? I asked. No. Me neither. She pressed her face against my shoulder. Tell me this wasn't a mistake. I can't promise that. She drew back, startled. I can promise it won't be a mistake because of me, I said. I'm not going anywhere just because you are. Jenna kissed me hard enough to make the edge of the table dig into my hip. The next week passed in cardboard boxes and lists. I worked during the day and helped her pack at night. We argued about whether 6 decorative pillows were necessary for one woman, then loaded all 6 because she threatened to leave my cactus behind. On her final night, we sat on the porch floor between 2 open boxes, eating takeout noodles. Her half of the duplex was nearly empty. You know, she said, most people date longer than 11 days before testing a 1,000-mile relationship. Most people wear swimsuits on a first date. You're never letting that go, are you? Absolutely not. She set down her carton and turned serious. My car can't hold everything. The movers are coming tomorrow and I was going to fly out Tuesday. Okay, but I changed my mind. My stomach tightened. About the job? No. She took my hand. About flying. What are you saying? I want to drive. That's a long trip alone. I don't want to go alone. The meaning settled between us. You want me to come with you? Just for the drive, help me get settled. See Denver, see what I'm asking you to be part of. I thought about my schedule, the service calls waiting, and all the careful reasons I could give her. Then I thought about the pier and the question that had started everything. Are you getting in with me? When do we leave? I asked. Her eyes brightened. Tuesday morning. I'll make it work. Jenna leaned over and kissed me, smiling against my mouth. Then she pulled back. There's one more thing, she said. What? I don't want you to come only to help me unpack. Her fingers tightened around mine. I want you to look at the city and tell me whether you could ever imagine staying. There was a version of me who would have heard Jenna's question as pressure. That version would have reminded her we had been dating for 11 days. He would have listed every reason moving to Denver was unrealistic and called the list maturity. But I wasn't that man anymore. At least, I didn't want to be. I can imagine it, I said. Jenna searched my face. You haven't seen it yet. I don't mean Denver specifically, I mean building a life somewhere with you. Her eyes filled and she looked away before the tears could fall. I'm not asking you to move next week, she said. I know how insane that would be. Good, because I have 3 installations scheduled. She laughed and wiped beneath one eye. Romance is alive. I'm saying I'll look, really look. I won't visit and spend the whole time proving why it can't work. That's all I'm asking. I lifted our joined hands and kissed her knuckles. And if I hate Denver, I said, we'll find another answer. What if you love Denver and hate my new apartment? Then I'll help you move again. What if the altitude makes you dramatic? I'm already dating a woman who ambushes men at lakes. I can handle drama. She climbed onto my lap and kissed me until I nearly knocked over the noodles. Tuesday morning, we loaded Jenna's hatchback. The rear suspension dipped alarmingly beneath her clothes, kitchen supplies, and the 6 decorative pillows she refused to abandon. I had arranged 5 days off. My manager assumed I was having a crisis because I had never voluntarily taken more than a long weekend. He wasn't entirely wrong. Jenna locked her door and stood on the porch, staring at the empty half of the duplex. Ready? I asked. No. I held out my hand anyway. She took it. We drove west with the windows closed because I had repaired her air conditioner before we left. Apparently, love was patient, kind, and capable of replacing a compressor clutch. The trip took 2 days because Jenna stopped for every scenic overlook and one roadside attraction advertised as the world's largest rocking chair. It's not even functional, I said, standing beneath it. You're upset because you wanted to sit in it. I'm upset about false advertising. She photographed me frowning beneath the chair and made it the picture attached to my contact information. That night, we stayed at a motel beside the highway. The room had 1 bed, a buzzing neon sign outside the window, and an air conditioning unit old enough to qualify for historic protection. I fixed it with a screwdriver from my bag. Jenna sat cross-legged on the bed, watching me. You really do bring tools everywhere. You brought 6 pillows to Colorado. Those are emotional tools. When the unit finally hummed to life, I turned around and found her standing behind me. She slipped her arms around my waist. "Thank you for coming," she said. "I told you I would." "I know, I'm still getting used to someone doing that." I understood what she meant. Chris had promised plenty according to the fragments she'd shared. He just treated promises like optimistic suggestions. I brushed a strand of hair from her face. "I'm going home after this trip," I said softly. "I know. And I don't know when or if I can move." "I know that too. But I'm here now. When I leave, I'll call. When we make plans, I'll keep them. You won't have to guess whether I'm still choosing you." Her hands tightened behind my back. "Neither will you," she said. Then she kissed me, and that anonymous motel room became the place we made our first real promise. Not forever. Not yet. Just honesty, effort, and no more pretending. Denver appeared the next afternoon, the skyline rising against mountains so large they looked painted onto the horizon. Jenna's apartment was on the third floor of an old brick building. It had tall windows, uneven floors, and a narrow balcony, overlooking an alley. "It has charm," she said. "That means bad wiring." "You're impossible." "You like me." "I do." The words were simple, but they stopped me. She seemed surprised by them, too. I set down the box I was carrying. "Say that again." "I like the apartment." After that, her smile became shy. "I like you." I crossed the room, took her face in both hands, and kissed her. "I like you too," I whispered. "Good, because these boxes are extremely heavy." We spent 2 days unpacking and exploring the city. Jenna showed me the office where she would work. I found an independent hardware store 3 blocks from her apartment, and 2 HVAC companies advertising for experienced technicians. I didn't apply, but I took pictures of the signs. On my last evening, we walked to a hill overlooking the city. Sunset turned the mountains copper and gold. Jenna stood in front of me with my arms around her waist. "Well?" she asked. "Well, what? Could you stay?" I considered giving her a joke. Instead, I gave her the truth. "Yes." She turned in my arms. "Not tomorrow," I continued. "I need time. We need time. I want to know we work on ordinary days, not only during heat waves and road trips." That sounds annoyingly reasonable. "But if we still feel this way in 6 months, I'll start making real plans." She touched my cheek. "And until then?" "We become experts in airport security." Long distance wasn't romantic most of the time. It was missed calls, delayed flights, and eating dinner over video while one of us fought bad internet. It was Jenna crying after a campaign meeting went badly and me wishing I could do more than listen through a speaker. It was her flying home for 48 hours and falling asleep on my couch before we finished the movie. But there were good parts too. Every visit became a choice. She met me at the Denver airport wearing the cream tank top from the lake because she knew exactly what it did to my concentration. I mailed her the apology cactus after she accused me of loving it more than she did. She sent me pictures of it thriving on her kitchen windowsill. At 4 months, I told my manager I was considering moving. At 5, I interviewed with a commercial HVAC company in Denver. At 6, they offered me a job with better pay and actual vacation time. I didn't accept immediately. I called Jenna. "Do you still want me there?" I asked. She was quiet long enough to make my heart pound. Then she said, "More than I wanted you at the lake." I accepted. I rented an apartment 2 blocks from hers rather than moving in immediately. Jenna pretended to be offended for 7 minutes, then admitted she liked that we were choosing each step instead of rushing to prove something. By the following summer, we were ready. We found a small house together with a wide porch, reliable wiring, and just enough yard for Jenna to insist we could grow tomatoes. On the anniversary of that first midnight swim, we drove back to Lake Merritt. The same moonlight stretched across the water. The same pier creaked beneath our feet. This time, Jenna carried a bag. "Did you bring swimsuits?" I asked. She gave me the smile that had changed my life. I brought options. We sat at the end of the pier, her head on my shoulder and my hand resting over hers. Behind us were 2 towels, 2 swimsuits, and the keys to a home waiting in Denver. For years, I had believed love was proven by certainty. Jenna taught me it was proven by choice, especially when certainty wasn't available. Then she stood, held out her hand, and asked if I was getting in. I took it without hesitation. What would you have done if your neighbor invited you for a midnight swim and only at the lake revealed she hadn't brought a swimsuit? Have you ever experienced anything similar? Tell me your story in the comments. And for those who'd like to be a little closer to us, we've opened memberships where you'll get shorter exclusive stories every week with no ads. If you like this one, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.